Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you the most overpowered new card cache build in Borderlands 4. As you can see there, Subjugator just got a huge chunk off of his health bar, and we'll be using the new class mod for cache, which lets him throw cards freely, which is actually pretty funny how strong it can be. Now, we're also going to get a pretty big boost to overall gun damage, and as you can see there, we're just chucking a bunch of cards, and I didn't even have to use my action skill there. That's the function of this new class mod, and it is very powerful as you can see there. Now, what makes this build so powerful as well is our gun damage is getting quite a boost from anti-up. On top of all of this, we're going to be able to trigger Groundbreaker using these cards, so there's a lot of ways in which this build is quite strong, and it allows you to get the platinum time here against the Instigator and Thol, the Invincible here, and it's really fun too. So I'll be taking you over all the different ways to make this powerful. There's a ton of different ways you can actually play this too, and as you can see here, I'm just tossing out cards while my action skill is cooling down. That is this new class mod. It is actually pretty strong after the gamer class mod got nerfed, and it can trigger Groundbreaker really easily, as you see there. So this is a strong build. It's a lot of fun. You can get this in Ultimate Vault Hunter 7, the platinum time, really easily. This new Prestidigitator class mod is honestly pretty good. The skill rolls on it aren't fantastic. It's just going to boost up your critical hit damage, but what it does is whenever you critically hit an enemy when we aren't in our Windfall, which will obviously happen often, we get stacks of the Prestidigitator. So whenever we then go into our Windfall, we'll then start to throw out cards. And oddly enough, for some reason, I'm not sure if it's bugged, but you'll throw cards sometimes when you're not even in your Windfall. So I don't even have great rolls on this. It's sniper rifle damage. I'm not even using a sniper rifle on this build. It is quite strong. It's meant for this build too, because it's going to draw from whatever cards you have in your blue skill tree here. So the big one being the cooler here, which does melee damage, which is able to trigger the Groundbreaker. That's how you saw the big chunks of health going off of the bosses. And since this rolls into Tender Hearts, we can get a greatly increased critical hit damage and chance while we're in our Windfall, which is huge for triggering these abilities. The Cowboy card is how we're going to get a lot of our damage. This is one of the most high damage cards when we're in Windfall. And there's actually a lot of changes across the board to Cache's skills. Even things like the Cache game are now working properly. And with weapons like the Hot Slugger, you can just hold down your fire and press the reload button to shoot this as fast as possible, which will trigger our Windfall. There are also a lot of new weapons that work great here, like the Abyss and even the Herald. And I'll be taking you through a full level guide and explaining the choices here. Now, one of the best skills early on is Alchemy. Only 1 point in here is needed. This gives you increased elemental effect chance, but whenever we apply those elements, we then get an increased stack of fortune. Just 1 point here is necessary to get that to stack, so that's what we're going with, because we need reload speed. Because we're using the Hot Slugger, we're reloading every shot. This will give us an increased reload speed, but also an increased chance to go into Windfall, since we're not going in the green skill tree to activate it easier. As much as I like Go for Broke, we don't need it on this build, and Sound of Rain just worked really well here. So this is a fortune skill that gives us increased critical hit chance with guns, action skills, and ordnance. The more fortune stacks we have, the greater the chance. This will also apply at all times as we get a little bit later on here, so this is really useful just because we want to get crits off with our cards. Now, late scratch is also important here because every time that we do reload, we'll end up getting ourselves a stack of fortune, so we can just manually get this up really quickly. Devil's Tines, obviously, so that we get that extra augment slot. Now, I was running with Wretched Shadows because this is a melee override that you throw a card and it'll slow and give you lifesteal, which is kind of nice. Not always necessary, as there is quite a long cooldown. So for the final points in here, you can put points into Trick Taker here because that elemental damage applies. Since all of these do elemental damage, not a bad choice to take there. Now, I've experimented with a bunch of different builds, mixing in the other skill trees. There's so many buffs that got added to this, and the red and the green got nerfed yesterday. So for my testing, it's best to continue on into the middle here. So Ace in the Hole will give us increased gun damage for every stack of fortune, and when Windfall is active, gain increased gun damage as if Cache had max stacks of fortune. So gun damage will then get applied to our action skill with a certain specialization, boosting up our DPS quite a bit. Now, this previously didn't work Cache game, but all fortune skills will act as if Cache had a minimum number of fortune stacks. So you can go with this here to give yourself some benefits without even having to have fortune. If you do prefer the around the corner, this gives you action skill cooldown rate. It's kind of between these two here. We almost have no issue with getting our action skill though, so I like to opt for maybe like House Edge, giving you half your fortune stacks whenever you enter Windfall, and then putting the rest of the points into Cache game here. Now, once we get down to the bottom, we want to have all of these. No Limit is super effective, so this gives us increased max fortune stacks. And Anti-Up, these are like our two best skills, funny enough, because what this does is it pushes all of our abilities even further, and it does decrease the Windfall chance, which is actually a considerable amount, 2% less per stack. Not even a worry though. Anti-Up though is probably the best skill here, so this is a fortune skill. Cache will gain increased gun damage and skill damage the more full his gun mag is, and the more fortune stacks he has, the greater the bonus. This is pretty crazy because using the Hot Slugger, which lets us reload often, this just gives us the maximum possible damage. I also like the Hellwalker on this, and this is especially good against Thol if you're going against him in this boss fight. But this is a skill choice that's probably giving us the most amount of damage in all honesty. So yeah, if you got a class mod like the Ludopath to increase this even further, that could be nice too. I'm not for the purposes of this video, but it is a choice. Now, once we get over to the left-hand side, we need to grab the cooler because this is going to give us the melee damage. There's a lot of builds like even Blue Skill Tree Vex that benefit from any type of Groundbreaker. This is super powerful, and that's how you've seen the health bar going down really quickly on the boss. Now, High Roller is good, I guess. Gives you increased gun damage the more action skill cooldown we have. It's good, but this is way better. Take the Pause of Fortune skill. Whenever we activate our action skill, we restore a portion of our health. Excess healing is added to shields and overshield. This just gives us survivability, which this build definitely needs. That gives us around 26,000 health restored on that, so pretty effective. Now after this, we have a choice. There's a couple good options. Legerdemain does not have anything really effective since we're using small magazine sizes. Stack the Deck will give us increased action skill and increased skill damage and fire rate. So you can see there, or whenever we activate our action skill, we're getting those boosts to the overall skill damage, which is huge. But I also think that going with Vigorish works really well here because this is going to give us bonus damage, which when we're using the Hot Slugger, we're getting some pretty crazy bonus damage from, or pretty crazy damage boost from anti-up. So it's going to eat up all of that and give us some pretty insane damage. So either way, I've tested both out. They both work pretty comparably, but I did lean towards Vigorish being a bit better. After that, we're then going to grab Cooler. So this is a really impactful augment. I guess I'll talk about augments now. Cowboy is great because whenever we trigger Windfall while our action skill is cooling down, we automatically recharge it. So what's great about that is that you can literally use your action skill, and then if you go back into Windfall, you got your action skill again. So you never have to worry about missing it. And the Acid Spray cards are very powerful. Now, all these cards are named after D&D spells, which I think is really funny, but this one is going to give us the most amount of damage to then trigger the Cooler. This will double all of our Windfall bonuses, which is pretty crazy when you consider how effective they are. So this will also add the Freezing Shards, which does melee damage. And basically what you want to do is you want to toss as many Acid Spray cards as you possibly can. Whenever you pull up a freezing card, if you have one in your hand, hold it to the last card, watch down the bottom middle of the screen, because you want to use this one last. It's going to take all those damages and apply Groundbreaker, the Specialization, which we'll get to in a moment. This is pretty effective. As you saw, the boss lost his health pretty quickly. Now the Dealer's Bluff is kind of nice as his capstone skill. Whenever Cash gains a stack of fortune, restores his action skill cooldown. You don't even need this, however, if you're going to be running with the Cowboy. This would be more so if you wanted to add on the Color Spray, which is also a very powerful one because this gives you additional charges on your Sleight of Hand, and it also will give you additional elemental damage as bonus damage on your gun. So use that if you wanted to swap out the Acid Spray Cowboy for Sweeten the Pot, but if not, you don't really need it that much. And afterwards, we're then going to bounce on over to the right-hand skill tree side. So kill button's cool. Ordnance damage isn't really the point of this build. Like I've tried a lot of ordnance builds. They don't work out too well here comparatively because payout will give us increased fortune skill bonuses, which is pretty insane when you consider that this doubles them. This adds another 40%. It goes pretty hard together. Afterwards, we got a choice. Now, Tender Hearts is my preferred option, but I do want to mention that Card Sharp is pretty crazy. So Sleight of Hand does not consume charges for a few seconds after activating it if Windfall is active. So with this, you get 5 seconds. It's roughly 5 cards you can throw out. So that's a pretty good boost to the overall amount of damage you can output with this skill. However, Tender Hearts will give us increased critical hit damage, and when Windfall is active, we get a chance to critically hit with action skills. So I've found from my testing that this gives us a lot more damage, but there's no wrong choice really between these two. Again, kind of similar to this. Both of these work very well in their instances, and I'm excited for the level cap increase because having both these together will be really nice. This will let you throw more cards. This will make the cards hit harder. And in most instances, getting more critical hit damage is going to be ideal because that just applies at all times, whereas this only applies with Windfall and your action skills. So I just found Tender Hearts to be a little bit better, but both of these are good choices. Again, we're not using any ordinances. And we're then going to take 1 point into Hot Streak. So whenever we gain a stack of fortune, the next time he damages an enemy with a gun or an action skill, it automatically will critically hit. Since we're getting fortune stacks pretty commonly from using late scratch there, whenever we fail, we get a stack of fortune. This is going to trigger often. There are class mods that can give you a point in here for 50% critical hit damage, which is quite nice. And we have 3 points left. So there's a couple options. You can put them into Trick Taker here. There's also the red skill tree because your Huckleberry will give us increased critical hit damage, 4% per stack. We're doing lots of crits, so this can be a very impactful choice to give yourself an additional with this class mod, 28% critical hit. I personally like to add a little bit of Trick Taker here, maxing that out of 5 points, just because that's elemental damage boost is going to apply to all of these cards here. And I do like Wretched Shadow. Again, this is a melee override, which will give you a Grasping Tentacle card, give you lifesteal. I also want to mention Insurance is pretty powerful. They also did change it to be a little bit more updated with the way it's applied. So this will give you more shield capacity, recharge rate, and recharge delay decrease. It also gives you a, whenever our shield fully stacks, we get a stack of Fortune. So you can take a single point into there just for that benefit, but you can also go even further, as the shield bonuses are quite nice, especially because there's a huge shield that just got added in this new update. And alternatively, you can take the point out, put one back into fast hands, and then go with that there and leave that at 4 points. And looking into class mods, there's actually a lot that work very well here. So the Prestidigitator, which was added in this new DLC update, or free DLC, I should say. This, whenever we critically hit an enemy, when Windfall's not active, we get those stacks, which then when we go into Windfall, we throw cards for free. It's actually pretty crazy. We can only throw 5 cards max, but that's really more than enough. And the great thing about these are they're free cards, and they'll also stack. And what's nice is you'll sometimes throw out those Acid Spray cards, and then you can also throw out a cooler card for free. So sometimes you're activating all your abilities pretty quickly and easily while you're in Windfall. This gives you insane damage boosts, and it's really fun too, just to have those cards be tossed out without your, say. There are also other options. Now, the Gamer class mod did get hit with a pretty hefty nerf, but it still works really good. Now, the thing is, whenever we critically hit an enemy with a gun, this previously was critically hitting an enemy with bleed or critically hitting an enemy with skills. It was triggering this. It's now only with guns. The Hot Slugger still hits extremely hard. And the nice thing about this is I got one that's got increased critical hit damage and fire rate, but whenever you do kill an enemy with bleed, you can spawn a Chaos Totem, which is pretty nice. The other thing about this is it can give you the Jinxed ability. So when we look at our skills here, we can get ourselves a nice boost to our overall damage by getting the Accursed Bones. Whenever we deal action skill damage to an enemy, we'll Jinx them, which makes them take 20% more damage. It's quite nice. It also will give us points into Tender Hearts as well, so we get that further increased critical hit chance, which we love. And it also gives us Trick Shot, which can give us some extra kinetic damage. So that's option 2. Despite its nerfs, still very strong. I still think it's really good here. There's also the Ludipath. This is really useful because you can, I have a lot of them here, but you can get it to roll with 5 points into Anti-Up. Anti-Up being one of the biggest damage boosts for this, because the Hot Slugger then hits like a truck. So if you can get 5 points into that, it's also really good. I personally like the new class mod. I think it's a lot of fun to use, so that's my personal choice for them. It can come with rolls of Tormented against Jinxed enemies, which is tough unless you're playing with another cache that can Jinx them. But I'm just going to stick with this one here because it gives us the most critical hit damage just naturally. So pretty effective. And I also like to pair this with Watch for Dinner. Obviously, the bonus shock damage is the best in slot shield. There was a new shield. I have it on my other characters that is decent. It gives you a huge amount of shield, which can pair well with the Insurance skill that you can select. I just think the Watch for Dinner boosting up our damage is so impactful. It's the best in slot. Protein Cell can work too. Fireworks, if you're mobbing, is also a great choice. And even the Super Soldier can be pretty effective as well. For the enhancement, now there's a lot of different ones. I actually wasn't even using one that's super effective. This just gives a gun critical hit damage. This is more so if you're using like the new Herald gun, which is a Torg weapon, but I like the Torg ones. There's also ones that are going to give you the, like any of the Jacobs ones will be pretty effective. Anything that gives you increased ricochets will be ideal. There's a lot of different ones. It just depends what rolls you got. Preferably getting bounce pass for that increased ricochet chance, but you could also roll with something like the COV one and give yourself that increased critical hit, 100% critical hit damage while overheating. I just think that this one here just worked well. I'm just looking for critical hit damage. This gives us a gun critical hit increase, which is quite nice when we're hitting so many crits. I'd also recommend using the throwing knife here. Now there's a few different ones that we can toss onto this, like anything that's going to give us statuses so we can apply fortune stacks. I just think the critical hit knife does work very well here. The new heavy ordnance that was added in this newest update, it's okay. It doesn't really fit on this very well. Crits will always just be nice because you can throw this on a boss and then you have a 90% crit chance on them. Super effective. And with that, I'd also recommend having triple bypass. I like the movement speed buff from this one, but the kill spring will give you a lot more survivability. There's other ones out there that are just like, okay. Increased fire rate could be cool. If you can get one that gives you like berserk for the extra damage, that's also nice. Kill spring with movement speed or the triple bypass with movement speed are my preferred options. And that brings us to our augments. I really like the high caliber, although the skill craft is probably gonna be best because that'll boost up even further the skill damage that we get from our cards, which then is just gonna be crazy. I like this though because this will allow our Hot Slugger to then do some piercing shots, which is pretty nice. It also gives a gun damage increase. But 3 points into Deadeye is nice because critical hits will grant 50% critical damage per stack for max 5 stacks for 10 seconds. So if you get 3 Deadeye, your critical hit damage is pretty insane, and it is actually quite nice. But I just keep it with high caliber for simplicity's sake, as it just buffs a lot of different weapons here. Now, there's a lot of new weapons. The only necessary one is Hot Slugger, obviously because it's got a small magazine size, benefiting from a lot of our skills in the skill tree. And on kill, we get increased damage by 30% for 10 seconds. It's up to 90% damage, pretty crazy. And it's Jacobs, so it's going to chain around and benefit from a lot of different abilities here. Now, there's also some fun new ones. I like the Herald here, the Unkept. It's very similar to the Herald if you've played Borderlands 2. It's a reference to Dirty Herald. Whenever I listen to this, the Gorilla song always pops into my head. It's still very strong. I like this weapon quite a bit. The Abyss is a new sniper rifle that has an added, you can actually hurt yourself by charging it up and not letting it fire. This can also come with Jacobs and Ripper parts, and it is very strong. I really enjoy this weapon, but it's not for everyone. The Constable also is pretty effective too. It's a shotgun that leaves little trails around, and the damage potential from this is quite high. I'll show these off for mobbing, but the general weapon that you'd want to use for bossing is typically Hot Slugger all the time because this is the fastest weapon we can reload. And again, the way to use this weapon is to press down and hold your fire button and then spam your reload button. This is how you can shoot it even faster. And I just did a video earlier today where I broke down all 18 new items that were added in this newest DLC. There's some pretty strong ones here, but I do think that these are standouts for Cash in particular. They also did patch that the Rooker no longer does some crazy stuff with Cash, so that's something to keep in mind. Crow Sourced is also quite powerful. This is from the DLC that Cash released with, and it's good too. Honestly, can't go wrong with the Scoot and Shoot. This thing is pretty beastly and shoots out multiple projectiles. It's a Toric pistol. Toric pistols in this game rock. Shalasha, Herald, and Scoot and Shoot are all like top tier weapons. They also just fixed the Crazed Earl to now be properly working, and if you get that with Ripper and Jacobs, it is really strong, especially because you can stack and remove the shards pretty easily with this. The Flash Cyclone, also a very good weapon. It'll also come with Jacobs and Ripper parts to be the most ideal one. I'm still a huge fan of the Dark Beast if you can get with a shotgun underbarrel. Crazy high damage, so that'd be my other choice. And Shalasha, always doing Shalasha things. It's very strong. The Roulette got quite a hefty nerf and no longer is as good as it was, but that brings us to Specializations. Now, there's a few that actually work really well here. We want to get anything that boosts up our action skill damage, so I'm a Gun will take our gun damage increases, which, just a reminder, we got a lot of them here in the blue skill tree, so you're constantly getting a big boost to your gun damage, which in turn will become action skill damage with I'm a Gun. Honed Mind will give us an even further critical hit chance and 50% extra damage. So if we get a crit off with our card, it'll one-shot a lot of bosses. It's crazy. In addition to this, Bare Arms will increase our gun by melee damage. I should also mention the Mantra Shotgun works really well on this build as well. And basically the big benefit here is we do have melee based cards, so this will boost them even further. I also like Groundbreaker because this is, I guess, kind of essential if you're going to want to run with the blue card or the ice card here, because this is melee damage, so it takes all those benefits and it is a beast of a skill. So yeah, this will just destroy bosses. They actually nerf this quite a bit and it's still super overpowered. You can go with Riddle You This though. 50% extra gun damage is kind of nice just for the simplicity's sake. Although we're using the Hot Slugger, it's not going to end up triggering this as often as we'd like. I also don't mind taking like Compounding Afflictions here, or the critical hits will give increased status effect application with Contamination, because they actually both will fit on this build, but we're tight for Specializations. These just give the biggest bang for our buck in terms of scaling up our damage. Now I want to show off the new Constable Shotgun here, because I think this is a really fun one, because it's going to leave these projectiles out in front of the boss there. So what's nice about that is you can actually have this chain around and do some pretty crazy stuff. The projectiles that it leaves in its wake is great for bosses that move around quite a bit, but basically what we want to do, you can see there, we're starting to toss out cards. Yeah, the cards that we're throwing, I didn't even activate my action skill there. It's insane. We threw out that cryo card, it deleted the boss. I didn't even have to pull out my cards. It's nuts. So I'll show you what this looks like here. So we basically want to go into Windfall, like trying to trigger that as much as possible. That's why the Hot Slugger is so good. Fast reloads, and you can shoot this often. And now we're just throwing out cards freely. So you do need to get some crits beforehand, but you're going to see that once we throw that final card there, that took out pretty much his entire health bar. It's insane. And then afterwards, we get crazy boosts to the amount of gun damage we have. So yeah, it's nuts. And I also want to mention that for whatever reason, my Cash has not been able to activate and get the, he hasn't been able to get it to Ultimate Vault Hunter 7, so that's why I don't have Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 on him. For whatever reason, I have it on my other characters, just not on Cash. I'm not sure why. I beat this skill, or I beat the Brothers in Harm here. I haven't completed. Ultimate Vault Hunter 7 did unlock. Don't know what happened. Maybe it's because I get Cash last. I don't know. Let me know if this is also affecting you, because it is kind of annoying. I know I'm going to get comments about that. But here's the Herald. I really like the Herald. It is really strong. The only thing is we are incentivized to reload as much as we possibly can. So with a build like this, yeah, you can see there, we threw out a ton of cards. We want to then go and stack our cards up as much as possible. The Hot Slugger just ends up being the best choice there. And you can see I'm tossing out cards oddly, even though my action skill is over. So not sure what's going on there. We did just enter Windfall again here, so pretty crazy. But yeah, this is a really fun setup. If you're able to get those acid spray cards, they delete the boss, and the Herald takes all those gun damage bonuses and adds them on pretty quickly. So yeah, across the board, this build got pretty much buffed on their last patch from Borderlands 4, so I'm excited to see what happens next. I hope that they buff up his other skill trees, because they were actually hit quite hard. As you can see there, we can just decimate, destroy everything with this build. So if this video is useful, hit the subscribe button below. We'll catch you all in the next one, and I hope you guys all have a great day.